Doing well. Thank you for being here. You'll be our first speaker after Molly
Right.
introduces the event. So
Got it.
thanks for
Okay.
being until then.
My pleasure. Thanks.
All right, I'm gonna let folks in if that's okay.
Hello, Molly.
Hello. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. We'll get started in a moment. Good morning. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. Get started in one more moment. All right. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us here today. Hello, my name is Molly Parzan, and I'm the Interim Executive Director at Conservation Voters of Pennsylvania. CVPA is a statewide advocacy organization and the political voice for Pennsylvania's environment. I am so proud to be here today with Congresswoman Susan Wilde, State Representatives Mike Schlossberg and Peter Schweyer, Lehigh County Commissioner Jeff Brace, Lehigh County Executive Phil Armstrong, and many of our partners in the progressive movement. We're thrilled to be joined by staff and members from Make the Road Pennsylvania, the Blue Green Alliance, IBEW Local 375, Penn Future, and the Environmental Defense Fund Action to stand in support of President Biden's Build Back Better bill and the urgent need for Congress to take action on climate change through the budget reconciliation process. It is so exciting to see the support for Build Back Better from such a broad cross-section of the Lehigh Valley community. I particularly want to thank Congresswoman Wilde for her strong leadership in fighting for the Build Back Better Act in Congress, and for all the local officials for being such effective and vocal advocates for making these critical investments. In many ways, the Lehigh Valley is at the heart of why Pennsylvania needs President Biden's Build Back Better Act. Build Back Better isn't just about finally addressing our climate crisis with critical investments in renewable energy and energy efficiency. It isn't just about transforming our transportation system with electric cars, trash trucks, and buses. And it isn't just about tackling other critical social priorities, like cutting the child poverty rate in half and investing in education and strengthening labor unions. At its heart, Build Back Better is about building a stronger, fairer future for regions like this one. While our local elected officials have fought hard to make places like Allentown and the broader region a vibrant place that can attract people and businesses, they deserve the help of the federal government to make the investments we need to strengthen the middle class and to transform our economy. The Build Back Better Act would create millions of family-sustaining jobs to finally meet the twin crises our nation faces: a growing climate threat coupled with rising inequality that threatens our social fabric. As many of you know, negotiations are currently ongoing that will shape any final legislation that makes its way to President Biden's desk. We need Congress to act on climate with the urgency this crisis requires and to meet the moment we're in. Climate must be included in the budget reconciliation process that unfolds in the coming weeks and has been unfolding, and we need as large a package as possible to make the president's vision of a fairer, more sustainable future a reality. It's time to build an economy based on clean energy. We have to act big and embark on a transformative approach to rebuilding. At Conservation Voters of Pennsylvania, we're working to advance three critical components that need to be included in the climate infrastructure plan as part of Build Back Better. One, we need 100% clean energy by 2050. We also need to invest in environmental justice communities who have borne the brunt of the damages of climate change. At least 40% of the funds and benefits of this climate package should be spent in and dedicated to low-income communities and communities of color. These communities have been struggling with health conditions such as asthma and heart disease that are exacerbated by extreme heat and air pollution driven by our worsening climate crisis. And they often have to deal with the worst damage from severe flooding and storms. And finally, we need to build an economy based on clean energy jobs, and in the process, create millions of good-paying union jobs. There is so much work to be done upgrading our infrastructure and making our nation more resilient and better equipped to deal with the impacts of climate change. But what does this look like? It looks like building infrastructure to support the expansion of public transit. Won't just take cars off the road that pollute our air, but it will also expand economic opportunity. We also need to expand the transportation network to support more clean electric vehicles. Lehigh Valley, in fact, is already a center of innovation in this area, as the nearby Mack truck facility has debuted an electric trash truck that will create local jobs and improve air quality. This is exactly the kind of work that this plan will help accomplish. We need to turbocharge investments like this and make Pennsylvania a leader in electric vehicle manufacturing. It also looks like weatherizing homes to both reduce energy consumption and improve quality of life for our residents by saving them money on their energy bills. And it looks like investing in green infrastructure to reduce the flooding caused by increasingly severe storms like Hurricane Ida that are hitting Pennsylvania with even greater frequency. The Build Back Better bill is a truly transformative opportunity to rebuild our economy and our infrastructure while achieving our critical goals for climate action, equity, and environmental and social justice. We appreciate the support of all of the leaders here. The time is now for all of us to join together and to meet this moment. Our first speaker is going to be Congresswoman Susan Wilde. Representative Wilde has been a member of the Lehigh Valley community for more than 30 years. Her two adult children were born and raised in the Valley where they attended public schools. Representative Wilde has built a successful legal practice while raising her two children and became the first woman to be appointed as Allentown City Solicitor. In November 2018, Congresswoman Wilde was elected as the very first woman to represent Pennsylvania's 7th Congressional District in the U.S. House of Representatives. Rep. Wilde serves on the House Education and Labor Committee, the House Ethics Committee, the Science, Space, and Technology Committee, and the House Foreign Affairs Committee. She is committed to fighting for equality, affordable health care for all, an economy that benefits every member of our community, and for reforming our political system to return government to the American people. Congresswoman, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Molly, and thank you to the conservation voters of Pennsylvania. Molly, you thanked me for what I do, but let me just say to everybody who is on this Zoom, thank you so much, because it isn't without notice that the efforts of our citizens and organizations like yours, the lobbying, the advocacy, is incredibly important in Washington, and I'm sure in Harrisburg as well. So I want to thank all of you. I'm happy to discuss our environmental priorities as we continue to push for the passage of the Build Back Better Act. It's an historic opportunity to tackle the climate crisis, to protect our environment, and improve the quality of life for everyday Americans. And I'm sure we've all been following with some dismay some of the recent news about possible limitations on the climate portion of the act because of holdups in the Senate. I am committed to getting everything we can possibly get in this reconciliation package included as part of our climate change effort. So I should also mention, I'm a co-chair of the Climate Change Task Force in the New Democrats Coalition in Congress, and a member of the Science, Space, and Technology Committee in Congress. And I've heard in those capacities directly from scientists and climate experts who are ringing the alarm very loudly about the climate emergency and the dire need for action to reverse the effects of climate change. However, Anyone living in the Lehigh Valley doesn't really need an expert to know that they are already facing the repercussions of the climate crisis right now. Just a few weeks ago, Penn Environment's Trouble in the Air report ranked the Lehigh Valley number 7 out of 28 worst areas in Pennsylvania where air pollution rose to potentially unhealthy levels. I talk to people every single day who suffer from asthma and other respiratory diseases that make them vulnerable to breathing issues related to air quality. And that includes Americans with long-term COVID or side effects from a COVID infection, a population that unfortunately grows every day as the pandemic continues. I know we can't make a choice not to breathe the air, but we can choose to take action to address air pollution now. And that's why the Build Back Better Act aims to invest in carbon and other pollution reductions in the surface transportation sector, which tackles the largest source of greenhouse gas emissions. It's not only important, but it's absolutely essential for the future of our public health that we address air pollution before it's too late. I also want to talk about another serious challenge that people across our Commonwealth face: the lack of safe drinking water. Toxic lead contaminants and PFAS, otherwise known as forever chemicals, plague the water fountains and faucets in schools, businesses, and homes across Pennsylvania, silently threatening the health of millions of people. The good news is that the other half of President Biden's agenda, the bipartisan infrastructure bill, proposes the largest investment in clean drinking water in American history, including dedicated funding to replace all of the nation's lead pipes and service lines. Everywhere in America, from the Lehigh Valley to severely disadvantaged tribal nations, will benefit from this historic investment in clean drinking water. And I want to mention again that that is part of the bipartisan infrastructure bill that has already passed the Senate. So it has it has less of an impediment to final passage than the ultimate reconciliation bill. But we are going to work on the Build Back Better Act, and we're going to get the best possible version through that we can. What's really exciting about the Build Back Better agenda is that it's an ambitious vision for the future, one where the United States doesn't just compete with China, but wins, manufacturing electric vehicles, electrifying public transit vehicles, and paving the way for a clean energy economy that creates jobs while fighting climate change. The US market share of plug-in electric vehicle sales is currently 1/3 the size of the Chinese EV market, which represents a huge growth opportunity for places like Bethlehem and Allentown, where good paying union jobs would help the economy and the community thrive. This clean energy jobs boom will also ensure cleaner air and water for families across our community. I know that it's been a remarkably tough time to think about the scale of economic, environmental, and public health crises and risks we're facing. But with plans for the Build Back Better Act in motion, I believe we are on the right track toward a more sustainable, eco-friendly future, starting with investments in energy, electric vehicles, electrifying public transit, and promoting projects that increase environmental justice. My district, Pennsylvania 7, is home to companies that do just that, including Mack Trucks, which already manufactures fully electric garbage trucks. I've had the good fortune to actually take a ride in one of them. They're not only very efficient and clean, they're also very, very quiet. And those trucks actually comprise the majority of the New York City Sanitation Department's fleet of refuse vehicles. Imagine that. But our work at home is only one piece of the puzzle. Our national commitment to a clean energy future will also come down to our ability to execute transformational policies, to bring industry to the table as a partner, and engage in meaningful dialogue with skeptics who say that you can't create jobs while preventing a climate crisis. Because frankly, those skeptics are just wrong. It has become abundantly clear that the reality of climate change requires bold solutions. We need to invest in sustainable energy sources and promote an economy that is resilient to the reality of our changing environment, while also making key investments to prevent climate-driven disasters from wreaking havoc in the first place. We have seen time and time again the risks of going too small in this battle, and we just cannot afford to pump the brakes when it comes to tackling this urgent problem. So it's a real relief that we have an administration with a clear vision of how to get it done. I look forward to working hard to meet the challenge of this moment and to deliver the environmentally sound, clean energy future that our children and grandchildren deserve by taking the first step, passing the Build Back Better Act. Thank you to conservation voters of Pennsylvania and everyone on this call. You are all doing tireless work to tackle the climate crisis. I want you to know that I stand with you in this fight, and I look forward to working with you in making a clean, environmentally future a reality. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Congresswoman Wilde. Thank you. We truly appreciate you being here and all of your hard work down in Washington. Our next speaker will be Pennsylvania State Representative Mike Schlossberg. Representative Schlossberg is the Democratic Caucus Administrator, and he served as the member from the 132nd District since 2013. In 2009, he was elected to Allentown City Council, becoming its youngest member ever. Thank you so much for being here, Representative Schlossberg.
Thank you very much, Molly. And let me start with the most important question of any Zoom conference. Can you hear me okay? All right, good. I see a thumbs up. Well, that's wonderful. Thank you for the kind introduction. Though I have a very depressing clarification. As time moves on, I'm no longer the youngest member ever to serve on Allentown City Council. By November, actually, I'll be the third. Sucks. Anyway, it is a pleasure to be here today.
Wow.
And it's very sad, Molly. I feel old. I have gray here. Anyway, it is a pleasure to be here today. It's an honor to be talking about such an exceptionally important topic, and it's a difficult thing to do when you're following somebody who's been as fierce an advocate for jobs in the environment as Congresswoman Wilde has. But I will give a little bit of a different perspective, which is one a little bit more centered around the specific needs of my legislative district, the 132nd in the city of Allentown and South Whitehall Township, as well as talk about some of the things we're trying to do in Harrisburg. Now, we know, and Pete and I can talk a lot about what Pennsylvania workers and families benefit from the most. We know that Pennsylvanians are best when they have good health care, paid a fair job, live in a safe and affordable home, have money for education, and a secure retirement. And these are things that people like Representative Schweyer and I are fighting for. But, and I saw this in my time as a member of Allentown City Council, and now I see it as a state legislator, your options are very often limited by the level of government in which you serve. The truth is that Pennsylvania has to have a balanced budget. We do not have the debt capacity or the ability to raise taxes the way the federal government does. We don't have the financial resources that they do, which means that in Harrisburg and Allentown, we and our families are dependent upon their help. The Build Back Better legislation, which we desperately must pass, would do a variety of really important things for our region. Now let's take a look a little bit again in Allentown and Lehigh County. When Representative Schweyer and I were on City Council in Allentown, the city of Allentown started conversations to merge its water and sewer systems with Lehigh County Authority, something that ultimately did happen. Part of the need for that was driven by the rapidly expanding infrastructure needs that the city of Allentown needed to engage in. Now, it was the right move, but it didn't change the fact that Lehigh County Authority is now responsible for a wide and desperately needed array of capital improvements. Lehigh County Authority serves 200,000 people, including my constituents in Allentown and South Whitehall. We take water and sewers for granted. We only really notice them just like oxygen when something goes wrong. According to their own estimates, Lehigh County Authority needs $68 million in water upgrades and another $144 million in wastewater. Now, that is also an issue that impacts some of my constituents the most, because one of the things we really struggle with in Allentown is lead pipes. Lead pipes are legacy infrastructure. They come from an old industrial city. We also have some of the highest concentration of lead water pipes in the entire Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Now, these pipes tend to affect people who live in older housing, and that tends to be my constituents who are poor, and my constituents who are of color. This means that infrastructure, that the Build Back Better Act, is more than just about jobs in the economy. It's something that directly impacts the lives of countless of my constituents, including and especially the poorest and the minorities. Now, we know that the Lehigh Valley is already becoming a leader in clean electric vehicles. As Congresswoman Wilde said, we have Mack trucks. I'm sure Representative Schweyer is going to bray appropriately about the pride of his district, but the Build Back Better Act would help Mack trucks. It would help create more jobs in the Lehigh Valley, and would also help us all in a much broader sense. Our region was hit very, very hard by Hurricane Ida. It caused flooding that closed businesses, hurt families, and endangered lives. The Build Back Better Act would put people to work by building green infrastructure that would reduce the risk of flooding while also improving the quality of water that all of my constituents, but again, especially my poorest and minority constituents, drink. Congress is negotiating the final details of the Build Back Better Act, and I've seen some ugly legislation negotiated, and I'm very glad, quite bluntly, to be far, far away from that. But that's why we send people like Congresswoman Wilde to Washington to fight the good fight and make sure that they can hopefully get a bill to President Biden by the end of the month. I am here to add whatever voice I have and the voice of my constituents to tell Congress to go big. Residents in communities across the country, including Allentown and South Whitehall, need the investments that the Build Back Better Act will provide. And legislators like me, frankly, at the state and local level, need a strong partner in the federal government to meet this moment and make sure that we can make a real, tangible, positive impact in the lives of all of my constituents. So on that note, thank you very much. I'm looking forward to answering some of your questions later.
Thank you so much for being here. We truly appreciate it, Representative Schlossberg.
Absolutely.
Our next speaker has already been mentioned, Pennsylvania State Representative Peter Schweier, who's represented the 22nd District in Lehigh County since 2015. Thank you so much for being here, Representative Schweier.
Molly, it's my absolute pleasure. And I think everybody can hear me now. I do believe I'm unmuted as well. I want to thank everyone for pulling this together. Congresswoman Wilde, I'd like to thank you for your incredible leadership on this on behalf of all of our mutual constituents. And frankly, I'd like to thank Representative Schlossberg, aside from one notable thing, mentioned he's now the third youngest person to have ever been elected member of City Council. Prior to his election, I was number one. So I don't like him very much. If you notice, his background is actually from my legislative district. I'm just pointing that out as a, you see, look, there you go, Mike, well done. So anyway, prior to, I think a lot of folks on this call may have heard this before, but I'm a lifelong Allentown kid. Not only am I a lifelong Allentown kid, but my father was a city worker in the city of Allentown. And his job for the overwhelming majority of his 33 years as a municipal employee was to repair water lines. My dad worked for the Allentown Water Department for the overwhelming majority of his professional career. And, as Mike said, subsequently, when we were both on city council, we were able to do a merger with Lehigh County, maintain it as a public asset as Lehigh County Authority. But at the time, my dad worked, when the water department was a municipal asset, my father was a maintenance worker there. I'll never forget, as a kid, we had a massive water main break not far from where we lived, just a couple blocks away. This water main break was so bad, it was cracking foundations in major buildings, including a church. My dad, a couple of police officers, other city workers, firefighters, were all in front of this church as the water main break opened up a sinkhole, and the building and the church collapsed. This historic building from the 1800s collapsed, and sending dust and everything around. My mom and I happened to be one of the some of the bystanders there. We walked the 2 blocks, watching my dad work and everybody else, and then I actually watched this building collapse. And now that was not a direct result of climate change, but that was a direct result of the lack of investment in our public infrastructure. And I'm not alone in seeing these things across Pennsylvania, whether it's the massive flooding in Schuylkill County of all places, or mudslides in Pittsburgh, or as we're seeing right here in the Lehigh Valley with in generations to come, the world will be less hospitable to humans. But it's also forcing us to reevaluate just our entire infrastructure package, how we're going to take care of our roads, how we take care of our bridges, and yes, how we take care of our waterways and the drinking water that we all rely on every day. Our public sewer systems are being impacted dramatically by climate change. And they're also being impacted dramatically by lack of investment. Everybody on this call, everybody that's watching this Zoom has heard a politician say to them once, we want to help create jobs and we're going to keep taxes low. Unfortunately, by keeping taxes low and unfortunately by not investing in our communities, we are not only taking jobs away from folks, but candidly, we're making it harder and harder for people to live in particularly in our older communities, places like Allentown, places like Bethlehem, even the smaller boroughs around us. And so by disinvesting in our public services, again, people are not going to work, and our roads, our bridges, our waterways, our public water, our public sewer systems are breaking at an alarming rate. It wasn't a couple of weeks ago, I had the opportunity to take a tour of a water filtration plant down in suburban Philadelphia. And the amount of investment that this is a private corporation is looking to do is staggering. It's in the hundreds of $millions, and that's for one water system. Now imagine what that's like across the entire United States. That is why Build Back Better is so important. Not only is it going to help us mitigate the effects of climate change, not only so long as Congress does the right thing, and I know Congresswoman Wilde will, and maintain the environmental provisions that are in Build Back Better, not only will that help reduce climate change and slow down climate change, but will also put hundreds of thousands of Americans to work or keep people employed in good paying, family sustaining, career creating, oftentimes and mostly union jobs that will help our economy not only in the next year or two, but help our economy for the next 20 and 30 years, while keeping our planet, cleaning up our planet and keeping our communities healthier and safer. For whatever it's worth, I joined with Representative Schlossberg, and I know there are other elected officials, County Executive Armstrong, County Commissioner Jeff Brace are on here, and hoping and pleading with our members of Congress and listening to our leader here, Congresswoman Wilde, and doing the right thing for our community and reduce and opening up the purse strings a little bit so that all of our communities can invest in our infrastructure, reduce the impact of climate change, and ultimately create great family sustaining jobs for the entire United States. Again, I want to thank everyone for inviting me to participate today. I want to thank the League of Conservation Voters for all that you do across the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, to our municipal employees that are just and our unions that are trying so hard to make sure people are able to go back to work. Thank you so much for keeping up the good fight. And Congresswoman Wilde, thank you once again for your leadership on this one.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Representative Schweier, for being here. Truly appreciate it. Our next speaker will be Lehigh County Commissioner Jeff Brace, who has represented District 4 since he was elected in 2013. Commissioner Brace, thank you so much for being here.
Good morning. Thank you for having me. I'd like to thank the League of Conservation Voters for their organizing this event. I'd also like to thank Congresswoman Susan Wilde for her leadership on this very important issue. On this and many other matters, you make us very proud. The quality of life in Lehigh County requires smart investments in our infrastructure. Growing up in the Lehigh Valley and living near the Lehigh River in a low-lying area, I was aware flooding always happened. It seemed to happen once a year, sometimes twice a year in some rare circumstances. But the flooding has become more frequent, more damaging, and more costly. It hits neighborhoods already affected by environmental justice challenges. It causes damages small business owners frankly can't afford, and it's costing our region jobs that our communities desperately need. As chair of the Board of Commissioners, I've learned some of the challenges we face, and it is never clearer than when the Board of Commissioners extended the charter of the Lehigh County Authority a few years ago. When we went through that process, we learned a lot about the needs that was present in our infrastructure. As Representative Schlossberg mentioned, the authority currently faces $68 million in water project needs. Of that, $12 million is needed to better serve the water supply of approximately 200,000 people in Lehigh County. And $40 million is needed to replace the aging infrastructure in the city of Allentown, which is reaching its 100-year life expectancy criteria. For wastewater, The authority faces approximately $32 million in water storage and other facility accommodation needs, which happen during wet water events, flooding. When it happens, those are the costs that we face. And an additional $60 million for pump stations to transport the increased flow that has happened in our region and is impacted by climate change. These projects need to happen, and we need Washington's support, or ratepayers. By ratepayers, I mean residents, small business owners, and homeowners alike are going to bear the brunt of those costs. The Build Back Better Act is critical to the long-term health and vitality of the Lehigh Valley. It would create jobs by investing in those critical areas I just mentioned, removing lead pipes and reducing the risk of flooding. We need Congress to act now to advance these critical priorities for our residents. It also offers a path forward to benefit our communities, support our businesses, and improve the environment in ways that also support jobs that pay living wages. We need Congress's support for the president's agenda and the thousands of others like my son growing up in Center City, Allentown. Again, thank you, Congresswoman Wilde, for your leadership. Thank you for Conservation Voters, Pennsylvania. Our communities will benefit in the long run.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Brace. Next, up next speaking, we have Francisca Mendez, member leader of Make the Road Pennsylvania, with translation provided by Patty Torres, organizing director at Make the Road. Patty and Francisca, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks so much for having us. Francisca will give a Spanish testimony. Francisca, ¿está aquí?
Sí, acá estoy.
Gracias,
Buenos días.
Francisca.
Hola, mi nombre es Francisca Méndez. Soy inmigrante indocumentada de México y soy miembro líder de Make the Road Pennsylvania. He vivido en Allentown por más de 30 años y quiero agradecer a ustedes por invitarnos a este importante evento y por darme la oportunidad de compartir mis experiencias aquí en Lehigh Valley. Ahora más que nunca necesitamos un plan de infraestructura y clima que aborde las causas fundamentales de la devastación climática y nuestra infraestructura que está en ruinas. No podemos aceptar ninguna estrategia que no aborde juntos las interacciones de raza, clase, sistema de energía extractiva y cambio climático, y la tan necesaria reforma migratoria. Como residente e inmigrante de Allentown, sé de primera mano lo que esto significa. Cuando llegué por primera vez a Allentown en 1991, nunca vi que las inundaciones llegaran a la puerta de mi casa mientras vivía aquí. Ahora bien, esto es una recurrencia constante. Las áreas que alguna vez fueron seguras ahora se inundan fácilmente y el agua de lluvia ingresa a nuestros hogares, causando daños y poniendo en peligro nuestra salud. Vivo en el lado sur de Allentown, donde hay varios arroyos que siempre se inundan cuando las grandes tormentas pasan por el área. La lluvia de la tormenta Ida provocó que mi sótano se inundara. Cada vez que tenemos tormentas como esta, mi familia tiene que apresurarse a sacar nuestros autos de las áreas inundadas. Las políticas que han dañado nuestro planeta son las mismas políticas que han provocado que millones de personas sean desarraigadas de sus países de origen y migren a condiciones más seguras. Estas políticas de extracción son las mismas que generan pobreza y cambio climático. Han creado refugios climáticos que se ven obligados a escapar de sus hogares. Dejé mi país de origen, México, principalmente debido al acuerdo comercial de NAFTA que creó pobreza en las áreas rurales de México. Con NAFTA, los bienes y el dinero podrían viajar más libremente a través de las fronteras, pero la gente no. Yo no pude. Como tantos inmigrantes, vine buscando un futuro mejor para mí y para mi familia. En 1988 crucé la frontera con mi esposo y 2 niños, que en ese momento tenían 2 y 3 años. Nunca fue nuestra intención quedarnos en este país. En aquellos días la gente podía cruzar la frontera más libremente sin papeles. La gente trabajó durante un tiempo y volvió a repetir el ciclo durante años. Pero llegó el momento en que nos empezaron a criminalizar y la frontera se volvió más militarizada. Esta es una crisis fabricada que nuestros funcionarios electos pueden solucionar si quisieran. El cambio climático solo empeorará para las comunidades de primera línea, que son predominantemente negras, indígenas y de color. El Congreso debe comprometerse a incluirnos a nosotros y a los pobres de las zonas urbanas y rurales en cualquier política que aborde el clima. Muchas gracias a todos.
Muchas gracias, Francisca. Y voy a interpretar su testimonio ahora. Thank you so much, Francisca. I will translate your testimony now. Hello, my name is Francisca Mendez. I'm an undocumented immigrant from Mexico, and I'm a member leader of Make the Road, Pennsylvania. I have lived in Allentown for over 30 years. Thank you for inviting us to this important event and for giving me the opportunity to share my experiences here in the Lehigh Valley. Climate change will only get worse for frontline communities that are predominantly Black, Indigenous, and people of color. Congress must commit to include us and poor folks across urban and rural areas in any policy addressing climate and infrastructure and much needed immigration reform. Our communities can no longer be sacrificed in budget and policy negotiations. Now more than ever, we need a climate and infrastructure plan that addresses the root causes of climate devastation in our crumbling infrastructure. We cannot accept any strategy that fails to address the intersections of race, class, and destructive energy system and climate change together. As an Allentown resident and immigrant, I know firsthand what this means. When I first arrived in Allentown in 1991, I never saw flood waters reach my front door while living here. Now this is a constant reoccurrence. Areas that were once safe now easily overflowed, and stormwater gets into our homes, causing damage and endangering our health. I live in the south side of Allentown, where there are several creeks that always flood when major storms pass through the area. The rain from the storm Ida caused my basement to flood. Every time we get storms like this, my family has to rush to get our cars out of these flooded areas. The policies that have harmed our planet are the same policies that have caused millions of people to be uprooted from their home countries and migrate to safer conditions. These policies of extraction are the same ones that create poverty and climate change. They have created climate refugees that are forced to escape their homes. I left my home country of Mexico mainly because of the NAFTA trade deal that created poverty in the rural areas of Mexico. With NAFTA, goods and money could travel more freely across borders, but people could not. I could not. Like so many immigrants, I came looking for a better future for me and my family. In 1988, I crossed the border with my husband and 2 boys who were at the time 2 and 3 years old. It was never our intention to stay in this country for a long time. Back in those days, people could cross the border more freely without papers. People worked for a while and went back, repeating that cycle for years. But there came to a point where we began to be criminalized and the border became more militarized. Climate change will only get worse for frontline communities that are predominantly Black, Indigenous, and people of color like my family. And Congress must commit to include us and poor folks across urban and rural areas in any policy addressing climate infrastructure and much needed immigration reform this year. This is a manufactured crisis that our elected officials can fix if they want it. We need champions in Congress for all of these issues that will improve the quality of our lives in the future generations. We need to pass infrastructure in the Build Back Better this year. Thank you.
Patty, thank you so much. Francisca, thank you for those incredibly impactful words. We truly, truly appreciate you being here. Thank you. Our next speaker will be Paul Anthony, Business Manager and Financial Secretary for IBW Local 375. Thank you, Paul, for being here.
Oh, thank you, Molly. I appreciate the opportunity to just participate today in our recording in progress. Just appreciate representing labor today. And, I'm thanking Congresswoman Susan Wilde and State Rep Schweyer and Schlossberg, Commissioner Jeff Brace, just for supporting labor. We truly appreciate all the support you give us. And, right now, today we're talking about clean energy and Build Back Better. And in the Valley here, we've already started. We talked about Mack Truck with the electrical vehicle garbage trucks. Well, before that could start production, we go in and we change the production line over, actually. So we were there last year getting that ready for production. So that really helped us there. On the charging station ends, we're starting to install charging stations, but it's more a little like remotely parking areas, hospitals. And what this bill will help will expand everything out for us. We'll be able to scale out. And that is key for labor, that it's an investment in infrastructure, we can scale it out. This bill is a vital investment also for working people. We think about all the provisions in this bill. Obviously, it'll be it's great for working people, and we truly appreciate that. Well, one last item also that we really need to address is the expansion of broadband. Everybody, this is being recorded now, and it's being zoomed, and we need to work on the broadband. Again, we're starting broadband here in the Valley, expanding some of it out, but again, we need to further scale that out. And this Build Back Better will really help us out. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Paul. Our next speaker is my dear colleague, Maria Ocasio, the Lehigh Valley Coordinator for Penn Future. Thank you for being here, Maria.
Thank you, Molly. Well, good morning, folks. Before I get started, I want to thank Congresswoman Wilde and Representatives Schlossberg, Schweier, the leadership for being here, folks sharing their personal testimonies, and just all of you in general to discuss the critical importance of Build Back Better agenda. As Molly had mentioned, yes, I'm Maria, and I'm the Lehigh Valley Field Coordinator for Penn Future, which is a statewide environmental advocacy organization with 5 offices in Pennsylvania. And folks, I'm sure you're aware, the Build Back Better agenda is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to bring critical federal resources back into Pennsylvania that will both improve our economy and help tackle the climate crisis. However, it is absolutely imperative that these historic investments are allocated in a just and equitable way so that nobody in Pennsylvania is left behind. There are, and I share and want to reiterate, there are too many communities across the Commonwealth that have suffered disproportionately for far too long with air pollution, contaminated water, and other impacts of environmental racism. That's why I'm here today to insist that the Build Back Better agenda contains provisions to ensure that none of these communities are left behind like they have been so many times previously. Let's just look over some things. $30 billion would go to replace lead service lines so that everyone has access to clean drinking water. $8 billion to create a civilian conservation corps that will create tens of thousands of jobs across Pennsylvania. $2.5 billion to provide a pollution-free energy and community solar to affordable housing complexes, underserved areas, and communities with high energy burden. And $20 million to reduce air pollution and toxins at public schools and low-income and disadvantaged communities. These are only a few examples out of many that are currently included in the Build Back Better agenda and that could impact the lives of our most vulnerable residents. And it's critical that we remain in the final package of bills passed by Congress. This is our best chance to create a sustainable and equitable Pennsylvania that works for all of us, not just some. We call on Congress to pass this agenda so that we can all create a 21st century economy that is good for workers, good for the environment, and most importantly, good for anyone who has previously been overlooked or neglected by private investments in our government. Thank you, folks.
Thank you so much, Maria. And finally, we are pleased to welcome Dan Taylor, Appalachian Regional Field Organizer for the Blue Green Alliance. Thank you for being here, Dan.
Thank you so much for having me, and thanks to everyone else for being here. My name is Dan Taylor. I'm Regional Field Organizer for Blue Green Alliance, and we are a coalition of labor unions and environmental organizations working together to solve today's environmental challenges in ways that create and maintain quality jobs and build a clean, thriving, and equitable economy. And we see Build Back Better as America's path towards that future. We need a recovery that addresses our nation's persistent and high levels of income inequality by creating millions of high-quality jobs in clean manufacturing, clean energy, restoration and resilience, the care economy, and by basic things like upgrading our infrastructure and buildings that need to happen. Importantly, these investments, we believe, must be prioritized for the communities that need it most, especially low-income communities, communities of color, communities facing environmental injustice, and deindustrialized communities in which workers face far higher rates of unemployment than the national and state average. So the time to act is now. Congress must be bold and invest in a Build Back Better budget to build a clean, thriving, and equitable economy for all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dan. I really appreciate it. So unfortunately, we're up against the clock a little bit, and we have time for just one question. Congresswoman Wilde, we've gotten this and a lot of similar questions from several folks on this call and before this, this meeting. There are so many committed climate and environmental justice activists here in this room right now. What can all of us be doing to get both of these bills over the finish line and to get this done in Washington?
Keep doing what you're doing. Keep demanding that legislators put your priorities into this and keep them in this very important act. Make sure that the environmental justice aspects are not overlooked. Electric vehicles are great. I think, you know, that it's a big part of how we move forward, but let's not forget that some of our communities have been particularly hard hit by climate change, and make sure that your legislators are not just adopting, you know, the overall talking point of addressing climate change, but actually focused on the details that matter to each of you. Believe it or not, legislators are actually very responsive to constituents. Not always, I mean, hopefully they're responsive in terms of responding to emails and phone calls and that kind of thing, but even more so responsive in terms of their votes. Speaking only for myself, but I'm pretty sure this is what happens in all other offices as well. We keep stats on what people are calling in about, what people are emailing us about, and what their opinions are on things. And it does influence, and there's a reason why they ask your zip code, because we want to make sure that we are being specifically responsive to our constituents, as opposed to just some group that has decided to call every legislator on Capitol Hill. But that's what I would say that you need to continue to do. Keep forcing the issue. We are going to be under significant pressure to diminish the size of the bill in the coming weeks, as you all are well aware. But the good news is that I talk on a daily basis with a whole lot of people in very competitive districts like mine. We're called frontliners because we are literally on the front line of whether we keep the majority in the House. I don't know a single frontliner who hasn't said that if climate is not addressed in the Build Back Better Act, they will be a solid no on the bill. So support them, uplift them, make sure that, you know, they're going to be vulnerable because they're going to be under attack, but from fossil fuel and other industries. So make sure that people know, that the American public know, that you in fact are part of a majority. You are part of a majority that not only recognizes climate change as an existential crisis, but also something that absolutely that the time is right now. Truthfully, the time was a decade ago at least, but we can only live in the present. The time is right now. We can't miss this opportunity. There isn't going to be another chance.
Thank you so much, Congresswoman Wilde. I could not agree more. What a great discussion. Unfortunately, we do have to wrap up here at the top of the hour, so I'll close by saying thank you so much to all of our speakers, in particular Congresswoman Wilde, for taking the time. And thank you to all of you who tuned in to this event and for taking action. There's a link in the chat to stay involved in our fight to pass this transformative Build Back Better Act. Please sign up there. We'll see you soon. Thank you all so much for everything you do every day in this fight. Have a great day. Thank you.